It is indeed a great honor for me to have the opportunity to be a part of this international webinar on UN Sustainability Development Goals 2030 with a well-framed topic organized by the International Institute of Organized Research, India, in association with Green Thinkers India, Center for Modern Construction, Western Sydney University, Australia, Sustainable Cosmos, India, and Professor G.D. Aggarwal Center for Scientific Development and Environment Advocacy, India. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by the 193 member states of the United Nations at the General Assembly in September 2015, outlines a transformative vision for economic, social, and environmental development of the nations towards a vision for the next 15 years. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which includes 17 goals and 169 targets, sets out an ambitious vision for sustainable development and integrates its economic, social, and environmental dimensions. This new agenda focuses on the expectations, aspirations, and the priorities of the international community for the next 15 years. It is a very coordinated commitment undertaken by both the developed and the developing countries in the framework of a strengthened global partnership that also plans the means of implementation to achieve the positive changes in the light of the prevention of natural disasters and climate change mitigation and adaptation. The SDGs focus mainly on the ways the countries can reach the 17 goals as per the agenda, and it's aimed to support with a long-term approach for each country on its path towards sustained, inclusive, and environmentally friendly development by formulating various public policies and budgets that aims towards achievements of the goals of the SDG. The 2030 Agenda emphasizes dignity and equality for all the countries, but at the same time, the implementation of the agenda will necessitate the involvement of all the sectors of the countries to integrate and coordinate with one another. Accordingly, the representatives of government, civil society, academic institutions, and the private sector should have to concentrate as a team for the goals to become a reality. It is much easier to trigger a change, but to sustain it over a period of time, you need the ownership of these changes from the people involved and from all stakeholders who will actively institutionalize those changes. That's where the success factor is in terms of SDGs, and that's where these transformations can really happen. Out of the 17 goals envisioned in the UN SDG, the eradication of poverty over the years has been one of the goals of the agenda of the SDG, and it has been the first and the foremost goal of the UN SDG. Poverty is more than the lack of income and resource to ensure a sustainable livelihood. It also takes into consideration hunger and malnutrition, the extent of access to education and other basic services, social discrimination and exclusion, as well as the lack of participation in the decision making rights of the masses. For example, if you take the developing countries, those children in the poorest household are 4 times less likely to be in school than those of the people from the richest houses. But extreme deprivation is not just about well being and opportunity, it is a question of survival itself. Ending poverty in all its forms around the globe forms the utmost priority of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. It calls for an immediate response. It has to be ensured that social protection of the people, enhancing access to basic services, and building resilience against the impact of natural disasters, which can cause severe damage to people's resources and their livelihood. The international community agrees through the Sustainable Development Agenda for 2030, the economic growth must be inclusive, especially of the most poor and vulnerable sections of the society. And it also aims to eradicate the extreme poverty for all people everywhere in the next 15 years, to mobilize the resource for all possible sources to help the developing countries eradicate the poverty of the people. A lot of poverty eradication programs and policies needs to be introduced and implemented in those countries to at least bring down the percentage of people who are below the poverty line. And the next important and crucial points to be bear in mind is that to concentrate on framing sound policies at the national and international levels to assist more investment in poverty eradication awareness, to take the necessary measures to implement some of the social protection systems at the national level. Fortunately, it is a positive indication that the nations have witnessed that extreme poverty rates have been cut by more than half since the year 1990. It should also be noted that if the world has to wake up to what the masses are subjected to in the sustainable world, the entire world countries have to be prepared to view this issue in a broader perspective of achieving the SDGs within the year 2030. These are not the goals of just the government alone. These are the goals for each and every one of us. The entire society approach to realize it and be a part of such an endeavor. Government leaders took decisive measures to progress towards the SDGs. According to various research, we are all well familiar. The fact that the wealth and the richness is not uniformly distributed across the globe, and the world's 2,000 more billionaires have more wealth than 4.6 billion people who make up 60% of the planet's population. And according to Oxford's Time to Care report, in the case of India, the richest 1% hold more than 4 times the wealth held by 9 million people. 1% do not survive, and at least 50% are guaranteed to be enrolled in colleges. So these kind of extreme inequalities in opportunities and access to healthcare and access to education are continuing to entrench the inequality that we confront in our daily life across the world, both within and between the countries. Moving on, millions of people are facing lot of issues related to this and the devastating impact of climate change. And 2010 happened to be the hottest decade ever experienced globally. Taking into consideration the present scenario, the world is experiencing a tough time in its fight against poverty. Within another 1 or 2 years, more than half of the world's people living in extreme poverty will be living in fragile states, according to projections by various reports. This reflects that while most stable countries can anticipate ending extreme poverty, more than a third of the world population in fragile states may live in extreme poverty. Today, 4 of the top 10 countries with the poorest people are fragile states, while the other 6 countries are considered relatively stable. By 2030, 5 fragile states in the top 10 will be the states that are currently experiencing fragility and conflict. And by 2030, 78% of the non fragile states will achieve Sustainable Development Goal 1 when extreme poverty, while only 19% of fragile states are expected to achieve this goal. Furthermore, only about half of all fragile states will reduce the absolute number of people in extreme poverty between the year 2020 and 30. The prosperity of the next generation will therefore primarily depend on the success in supporting the most vulnerable populations, potentially requiring more creativity and dedication than ever. And in spite of all this, the impact that has been created around the globe has changed the entire scenario topsy turvy. Because of the coronavirus pandemic, countries will have to prepare for a different economy post COVID by allowing capital, labor, skills, and innovation to move into new business sectors. The coronavirus pandemic is estimated to push an additional 88 million to 110 million people into extreme poverty this year, with the total rising to as many as 150 million by 2021, depending on the severity of the economic contractions. So, to overcome this serious situation about the progress of the economy and the poverty reduction, world countries will have to be prepared for a positive approach post COVID by innovating new business ideas that will compensate for the loss incurred in the recent past due to the ill effects of the pandemic. But at the same time, it is an undeniable fact that by following effective approaches, it will be possible to tap the skills and dedication of the community members. The World Bank, as per the report, Mumbai city officials were able to stem the rapid spread of the coronavirus in Dharavi, one of the city's largest urban settlement, by mobilizing community members as well as the staff from private medical hospitals for a strategy based on mass screening for fever and oxygen levels. Within a short duration of 3 months, the reported cases in that area had been cut to 20% of the peak in May. So within a short period of 3 months, they were able to achieve it. It is only because of a spontaneous and a strategy-based screening process. A mass-scale screening process was undertaken, and because of that, they were able to reduce it to that extent. And it was mainly to help poor families during the lockdown. Various charitable foundations, non-governmental organizations, and volunteers provided thousands of households with kits that contain the necessities of life. The unity and the humanitarian thoughts of the people of the country have been so well demonstrated, while the big corporates and the business leaders have come to help the common man by all means, the common man with the necessities of life without having any expectations in return. The UN has developed a framework for socio-economic response to COVID-19, and all efforts on emphasizing on the fact of building back better in all the context as much as possible so that we actually can use the COVID-19 course to the business as the usual system which we experience now into a transformative experience. And finally, we have 10 years left. What do we need to do with the next 10 years? We need to mobilize everyone, everywhere, and so we are entering the decade of action, and mobilizing webinars like this will play a great role in creating that awareness and bringing together those stakeholders who can bring about a positive approach in fulfilling the goals of the SDG. Having this very inclusive discussion as we go forward, it is the right time for us as owners and custodians of the sustainability goals of the world to demand urgency from whichever setting we are in, whether it's private sector, academia, or anywhere. And finally, we need to design new innovative solution to accelerate the progress towards the achievement of the SDG goals and make it a reality with our combined and coordinated efforts of the world countries together. Once again, concluding my words with thankfulness to all for giving me this wonderful chance to speak and be a part of this great conference.